Before the catastrophe, Europe was confident. The early 14th century was an age of expansion, not decline. War existed, hardship existed, but the overall direction of society pointed upward. Fields had produced reliable harvests for generations. The population had surged. Towns had swollen beyond their old Roman walls. Stone cathedrals climbed into the sky, their pointed Gothic arches and stained glass still standing today in places like Notre Dame de Paris, Florence Cathedral, and Cologne Cathedral, physical proof of a civilization that believed in permanence, order, and divine favor. Trade routes stretched like arteries across continents. Under the Mongol Empire, a vast zone of relative stability, often called the Pax Mongolica, allowed merchants, caravans, and ideas to travel from China to the Mediterranean with unusual safety. Silk, spices, precious metals, and knowledge moved steadily west. Europe was not isolated. It was integrated into a growing global system. That interconnectedness generated wealth and optimism. It also created vulnerability. The turning point began far from Europe. In the grasslands of Central Asia lived a bacterium called Teams Yersinia pestis*. Invisible to the human eye, it circulated quietly among wild rodents, such as marmots. For centuries, it remained largely contained within that ecological system. But environmental stress in the early 1300s, shifts in climate that disrupted food supplies, pushed infected animals closer to human settlements. Their fleas, searching for new hosts, made the leap from rodents to people along trade corridors. Caravans did not know they carried more than goods. Step by step, port by port, the infection traveled west. By the 1340s, scattered reports described sudden, lethal illness in Asia and the Middle East. Most Europeans regarded these stories as distant misfortune. Their medical understanding was built on ancient ideas about bad air and bodily imbalance, not microscopic organisms. No one grasped the chain of transmission already in motion. One place mattered more than most: Kaffa, a fortified trading port on the Black Sea. It linked Asian caravan routes to Mediterranean sea lanes. In 1346, it was besieged by a Mongol army. During the siege, plague tore through the attackers' camp. Soldiers died in large numbers. Chroniclers describe the Mongols catapulting infected corpses over the city walls, an early crude form of biological warfare. Whether this act was decisive or symbolic, the disease entered the city. Merchants fled by ship. Genoese vessels carried refugees across the Mediterranean. Rats lived aboard nearly every medieval ship, and fleas lived on the rats. When ships docked in Messina, Genoa, Venice, Marseille, the animals disembarked as easily as sailors. Within weeks, ports ignited with disease. The illness moved with terrifying speed. Victims developed high fevers, weakness, and painful swellings of lymph nodes, the buboes, that defined bubonic plague. Some forms spread to the lungs, allowing person-to-person transmission through breath. Death often came within days. Cities amplified the disaster. Medieval urban life was dense. Houses leaned over narrow lanes. Waste disposal was primitive. When infection arrived, normal systems collapsed. Officials died. Trade stopped. Food supplies faltered. Church bells tolled constantly, then fell silent when ringers succumbed. People searched for explanations. Without germ theory, many believed the air was poisoned or that God was punishing humanity. Some gathered in prayer, others fled. Movements of self-punishing religious groups, known as flagellants, spread through towns. Fear also turned violent. Jewish communities, falsely accused of poisoning wells, faced massacres in parts of Europe, a tragic example of how panic fuels persecution. The countryside did not escape. Most Europeans lived in villages tied to the manorial system where peasants worked land owned by lords. As laborers died, fields went unharvested. Entire settlements vanished. Livestock wandered unattended. Forest and scrub reclaimed farmland. Archaeologists today still identify lost villages abandoned in this period. By 1351, the first great wave burned out. There were simply fewer people left to infect. Modern estimates suggest that Europe lost perhaps 1/3 to 1/2 of its population. Across Eurasia and North Africa, tens of millions died. The consequences reshaped society. Labor became scarce. Survivors could demand wages and mobility. In England, attempts to freeze wages through laws like the Statute of Labourers show authorities trying and often failing to control this shift. Over time, serfdom weakened in many regions. Economic power began to tilt, slowly, toward workers and towns. Public health measures also evolved. The word quarantine comes from the Venetian practice of isolating ships for 40 days. Purpose-built quarantine stations, called lazarettos, were established early steps toward organized disease control. These ideas echo in modern public health systems, border health checks, and epidemic response planning. The built environment changed. In some areas, depopulation reduced overcrowding. Later, urban planning placed greater emphasis on open spaces, ventilation, and sanitation principles central to modern city design. Records, burial practices, and hospital foundations expanded. Institutions that still exist in various forms today trace administrative roots to this era of crisis management. Culturally, the plague altered perspective. Art and literature confronted mortality directly. The danse macabre motif skeletons leading people of all ranks to the grave captured a hard truth. Status offered no immunity. That realism fed a broader intellectual shift that, over generations, contributed to the questioning spirit of the Renaissance. The Black Death did not create the modern world by itself, but it destabilized old systems, accelerated change, and forced adaptation on a continental scale. It exposed how tightly connected societies can transmit not only wealth and ideas, but danger. It demonstrated that biology can override political power, military strength, and economic confidence. Cathedrals from that era still stand. Trade networks still bind continents. Quarantine remains a tool. Public health laws, labor rights, and urban planning all carry echoes of lessons learned at enormous cost. The 14th century believed it was secure, advanced, faithful, expanding. Then, an invisible organism revealed how fragile, complex systems can be. That realization did not end civilization. It transformed it. The Black Death is not only a story about death, it is a story about exposure of weakness, inequality, fear, and resilience. When crisis strips away routine, societies reveal who they are and what they value. The survivors rebuilt differently than before. And that pattern, confidence, disruption, adaptation, remains part of the human story. If you're tired of shallow summaries and want the real forces that shaped our world, the power, the conflicts, the hidden decisions, then this channel is for you. Subscribe now and sharpen your understanding of history with every video.